Hello, all. Welcome to this webinar on understanding AI disclosures, why, when, and how to disclose AI use. I'm Nolita Coelho, your host for today, and I head up the AI research and writing tool Paperpal, where we really believe that AI should fuel creativity and productivity while safeguarding the rigor, integrity, and originality of academic work. In short, PayPal's motto is to partner with you so that it strives to bring out the best in you, your writing, and your research. To achieve this, the tech gets us about halfway there, but it's equally important that we enable students, researchers, and educators like you to engage more thoughtfully and effectively with AI. And emerging from this thought was our educational initiative, the AI Exchange, that brings you today's session and many more like these to address some of the practical challenges with AI in education and research. So, joining us in this third episode of the AI Exchange is Tina Austin to share her experiences and expertise on working with AI. Hi, Tina.
Hello, Nalida. How everyone? Thank you again for
Thanks.
having me here today.
Awesome. And Tina has an amazing background. Tina is a biomedical researcher and an award winning educator who has taught at UCLA, USC, CSU, and Caltech in subjects spanning regenerative medicine, communication, computational biology, AI ethics, and critical thinking with AI, a topic that we're all seeking her insights on. She's also an AI literacy pioneer who helps universities and organizations adopt artificial intelligence thoughtfully and responsibly. Recognized amongst ASU GSV's top leading women in AI, and as a Microsoft innovative education expert, she also advises the California Department of Education and the Los Angeles AI Task Force on responsible and inclusive AI adoption in education. So exciting to see what she has in store for us. But before I hand over Tina, I'll take a few minutes for some housekeeping so that you can get the best out of today's session, and also a little background as to why we picked today's topic. So, Tina, if you don't mind, I'm just going to share a quick deck from my side. I think you might have to pull yours
Yes,
down a minute.
do you want me to start presenting?
Yeah. Thanks so much. Um, yes, so just some housekeeping for the group to understand how to use the platform. So just give me a minute. Okay, there we have it. Just a few slides and we'll be back in there. Okay, so just to understand what you see on the screen and how to engage with the session, on the right, you have a chat window, and Tina was hoping that people could unmute and speak today, but you'll have to use the chat and share your experiences, share your questions. There's a Q&A window just below that where you can actually drop in your questions, and we'll take these in the Q&A segment at the end of Tina's presentation. If when Tina's sharing her slides, you can watch in full screen. There's a little icon with an arrow on both sides that you can click on, and you can also use headphones for the best audio experience. The webinar recording and some resources will be shared within a day or two after the session, so don't worry about taking notes, taking screenshots. Just be there, participate, chat, and get the best out of it. So diving a little bit into why we picked today's topic, and I know we have a large number of PayPal users in the audience. So interestingly, I received the Journology newsletter last week, and it cited the study of 49 biomedical journals, which looked at it was a preprint study that looked at how many authors self-disclose use of AI. And what it found was the actual proportion was really small, about 5.7%. And this was a lot lower than what people have reported in surveys about disclosing use of AI. And now, if you look at what they disclose, it was predominantly improving the quality of writing. Now, why this resonated with me was we ran a similar survey back with PaperPal users in July, and what we saw was about roughly a little less than 1,500 academics who took the survey, and a mix of both students, professors, publishing authors. AI was widely used for a variety of tasks, both from structuring, writing, polishing, to citing, literature review, finding research. But all of this comes at a price. A majority of them, kind of fear any kind of plagiarism or misconduct from use of AI, and also, risks about, am I using it ethically or not? And in addition to this, half of the survey respondents actually mentioned that they did disclose AI, which is still a much higher percentage as compared to the preprint study. And what they did say is that even if they did disclose the use of AI, they were concerned, and they, some of them did feel or find some negative bias or increased scrutiny because they disclosed of UI, they disclosed use of AI. And this is becoming a real challenge. What is the perception? How will my effort be viewed if I really disclose that I have used AI? And this is equally a challenge to solve as compared to others who don't disclose. And for those who don't disclose, not surprisingly, it is, the lack of clarity around guidelines, consistency, definitions of what constitutes and doesn't constitute AI. So there's a lot more need for guidance, and clarity around, how to disclose, what to disclose, where to disclose. And I think that's why today's session is exciting. We have a mix of both, people from both sides of the table. We have students, publishing authors, as well as professors and educators, who are looking at, how do we really, kind of address this challenge right head on, because it's a real problem no matter where you sit on, which side of the table that is disclosing or not disclosing. So with this, Tina, I'd invite you to take over and, walk us through your thoughts on this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I think I lost a bit of what you said earlier. I don't know if there was a connection issue, but it's fixed now, right? Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you again for the introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. Fantastic. All right. So, my hope is in the next 30 or so minutes to discuss about AI disclosures, as Nolita mentioned, when, where, how to disclose it, and where the opportunity is. So, a little bit about me, as Nolita already mentioned, I've been both teaching in this space and practicing in this space, and also consulting in this space. So, feel free to follow or connect with me on LinkedIn here. This is my information, and I'd be happy to talk to you beyond today if there's any time. I saw some people in the chat mention that they're joining from different countries. Yes, feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining from. It's always nice to see different folks from all over the world. Thank you. All right. So the objectives are to understand what AI disclosures are, when AI must be disclosed, and we'll talk about how to craft clear, transparent use statements aligned with journal or institutional guidelines, and then talk about some examples and where is the opportunity in all of this. So I don't know if you saw the poll earlier with Nolita. I know there's an internet connection issue earlier, but the biggest concern seems to be around uncertainty about when to use AI and whether, and less about believing it's not necessary. Now, before this today, I sent out a survey which 112 people responded to, and looks like the majority, when I asked, have you ever disclosed your use of AI in a manuscript, grant, or academic assignment, majority by a slight margin said no, which was interesting for me because after that it was yes, and then I'm not sure when or how to disclose, and then not applicable yet. So this was interesting for me to see that majority have not actually disclosed their AI use in a manuscript. The next question I asked was, what is your current role? And looks like the majority are PhD students, at least the majority that did the survey, and then followed by other uh, faculty, and then master students. So this is good because we're talking. We have in the audience people that are now joining, potentially the workforce in a couple of years, and it's really important to have these discussions now. I know when I was a PhD student, I didn't have a lot of clear guidance at the time, and it's really good that this opportunity is being provided by Paperpal for the audience today. And have you used any AI tools in your research or writing? Again, this was very surprising for me that, in fact, more than 50% of our participants today have used AI in their research and writing, and yet most of the participants are also not really disclosing because either they're not sure or that's why they're here today. And after that is yes, regularly, and then no, but I'm planning to, and less no, I don't plan to. So if we had taken this poll maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it's almost 3 years, the birthday of ChatGPT. Uh, I did a survey with my students, and majority had not really used it. Obviously, it just came out, and then over the years, I'm seeing this yes number increase, and now we have the occasional users of being majority in the survey. So why did I mention all of this? Because it's important to, before we dive in, to realize that you're not alone if you're in this space and trying to figure out how do you really disclose your use of AI in research. It is kind of a blurred line when you go from one journal to another, and there's a difference between AI assistance and undisclosed AI authorship. So we'll talk about that today. And the goal really is to how do you move from this gap to a culture of transparency? So, majority beyond my survey, less than 25% of authors are in fact disclosing AI use in major studies, even when policies require it. And why do you think that is? Again, feel free to drop in the chat why you feel that this is not being currently disclosed. I'm happy to read the comments as I'm moving along. Yes, thank you. Fear. Yes, I think if a fear is a big factor, or wondering, what will happen, the consequences. Lack of education on the subject, unawareness. Very good. Different states have different guidelines at this time, and everybody's worried about whether it's considered plagiarism or not. Thank you. Yes, there's the risk, right? Because um, how should you disclose? It's kind of like AI in writing these days. A lot of people may use it in their emails and their slides in many ways, but they might be afraid. Well, if I say that I've used it, there's an element of shame or fear or phobia, right? I see this in the in the comment section. So, what even is AI disclosure? So, AI disclosure is the practice of informing users or the public when a piece of content, service, or an interaction is being generated, assisted, or influenced by artificial intelligence. So, it's not just a piece in the writing, it could be assisted or influenced. And in fact, when I was making these slides, I thought, why not throw in there an image here? But to show you as an example how I would say that I used AI here to create this, because again, this is still considered AI generated content. And I put the date and when I used it for this particular slide. Now, you might see a lot of slides from a lot of presenters these days. And most people are used to just putting that image in there from ChatGPT and may not always remember to include that they have to disclose that they used AI. And yes, you're right. It is there in most journals. So why it matters, obviously, I'm sure everyone can agree. This is about integrity, trust, and credibility. Um, in order to allow editors, reviewers, and readers to have a fair assessment of what you're actually presenting to the public and if it's original. So I don't know if anyone is familiar with this or has seen this before. There's plenty of authors online that are self-publishing. Maybe a year ago, I saw this particular author who published a book And then in one of her paragraphs in her book, she mentioned, I've rewritten the passage to align more with Jay Bree's style, which features more tension, gritty undertones, and raw emotional subtext between the supernatural elements. So imagine this was a paragraph that she'd written, and then in the middle of this, there was this statement, which clearly looks like it may have been written by ChatGPT or Claude or one of those. And so that later caused this author to now write an apology and say, I'm going to be more careful next time. Um, but it wasn't a good look for the author. And these can have major implications down the line um, for whether you're self-publishing a book on Amazon or you're contributing to a scientific journal. So now Amazon has this new policy, November 2025, that they require you to inform them of AI generated content. When you publish a new book or make edits and republish an existing book, you have to include that you've used AI generated content, and you're not required to disclose AI assisted content. And we distinguish between AI generated and AI assisted. So I wonder if anyone here in the audience wants to type a few things if they know the difference, maybe yes or no, about the difference between AI generated and AI assisted. See a few comments here in the chat. Okay, not really. Okay, so okay, AI assisted, like using PayPal, assisted based on the structure. So AI generated, we define AI generated as a text, image, or translations created by an AI-based tool. Whereas AI assistant is if you created the content yourself and then you use AI to assist, to refine, to error check, or maybe improve the content, then Amazon considers that as AI assisted, not AI generated. So similarly, if you've used an AI-based tool to brainstorm and generate ideas, but ultimately you created the text yourself, this is also considered AI assisted and not AI generated. And it's really for Amazon, not necessary to inform them if it was AI assisted. Maybe you just needed a polish or you needed it to correct some typos. They don't necessarily care about that, but they want to know if you built something from the ground up with AI, now you will have to disclose that as AI generated. Okay. Yes. So moving on, how does this look like in scientific papers? Remember, I just showed you an example from an author that self-published on Amazon. Now, in scientific papers, what that looks like, instead of just an apology, now your work gets retracted. And for example, in the case of these authors, I don't know if anyone's familiar with this paper. This was a chemistry paper, I believe, last year. The paper actually began with the sentence, certainly, here's a possible introduction to your topic. And this was published, right? And so the authors had originally nothing there about whether they've used ChatGPT or a Claude or AI or not. And the paper began with the sentence, certainly here's an introduction for your topic. And they didn't proofread it, they didn't disclose it. And now they had to retract it. And so what can you imagine are some of the consequences for authors like this? The retraction notices are permanent and public, so they're always going to be tied to these names. Unfortunately, whether it was one person or the other person now, uh, everybody's going to use this as an example of what not to do. So that's very public. Funding agencies like NIH and the NSF might bar those particular individuals. It's possible, but um, it's not a good look there. And also there's reputational and career impact as well as potentially employment barriers. So overall, what could have been a simple, we used AI to generate this, instead, no disclosure, and there was clearly this statement. So again, I'm not going to say more about this, but just wanted to put that in to highlight how important it is to disclose AI use as an example. Let me look in the chat here. How did it get published without editors seeing that? That's a good question. And I see that, I've seen that in both biology, medicine, and other papers. And often my grad students come to me and say, here are some of the ones that came out last month. So it's really a good question. How, if you're writing something or producing something, you should really proofread it, and you should really disclose your use of AI. Being transparent and honest is the only way forward in science. So what does that look like for each journal? We talked about Amazon. Um, what does that look like for Elsevier? How does it look like for Wiley? How does that look like for Plus One? So these screenshots from 2024. Originally, it was just you should disclose in the manuscript whether those AI technologies were used. Wiley has said something different. If an author has used a Gen AI tool to develop any portion, it must be described temporarily and in detail in the methods section. In the methods section, so it's different for Wiley from someone else. And then Plus One will say all statements from the article and reporting hypothesis, interpretations, results, and implications must represent the author's own ideas. So it's slightly different. And this was again 2024. What was important is always what type of tool was used, how was that tool used, how did you use Claude, how did you use Perplexity or any other AI tool, and what was used. Now, fast forward to 2025, these journals have updated their policy. So what has changed? So current policy is you should disclose in your manuscript the use of AI and AI assistant technologies. The disclosure will appear in the public work. They can't list the AI tools as authors or co-authors. This is very important because I believe some people early on, early days of ChatGPT, thought they could put ChatGPT et al. Or put them as authors. They are not authors. They're not co-authors. And authorship implies tasks and accountability, and you can't expect that company to have accountability over what you're producing, and it's only something that humans can bear. Basic language grammar tools, spell check, minor editing might be exempt from full disclosure, but if major AI assistance is used, then disclosure is required. So when I say major assistant, I saw someone in the chat was saying, well, how much of it can I just say? Can I do like a couple of sentences? I would go with, if you're doing a couple of quick spell checks, right? Then that's not something major. But if you're writing a whole paragraph, you're coming up with a whole hypothesis or a conclusion, that would now be considered AI assisted and AI generated. And now you would actually have to um, um, also still proofread this as a human. I would not generate a whole paragraph with AI and then copy it, put it into my journal or my publication, and then um, um, just say, well, I used AI to generate this. You would really need to still proofread it like an academic and question every single thing that's there. And I'll talk about how we can question these things later in the talk if there's time. So what has changed over the years is the policy seems to become more clear on where to place the disclosure in the manuscript or in the methods section. So be very aware of what that actually asks of you. And the broad move from maybe you should mention it to you must disclose, it's become more and more clear from being something vague. Now, that was just one journal. Let's move on to Wiley here. A major publisher is not just scientific journal. Here, what they've done, and I'm not going to read the whole thing here, is they have included FAQs, how to track AI usage, how to document it, where to put the choice of tool, um, privacy considerations, and they've gone from mentioning if you just use AI to a full guide with tracking requirements. So it's helping authors consider not just did you use the tool, but what tool, why did you use it, how did you verify the output? This is very important. How did you verify the output? Because a lot of people, particularly students, especially grad students, they they assume that the AI output is accurate. They assume that it is scientifically correct and the sources all add up. However, sure many of you know, and I've used this several times in my classes for students to critically evaluate, and most of the time, the links provided by AI don't always go back to a real source. And I'm looking at the chat now here. Could I pay someone to do this? Could you pay someone to proofread? And yes, thank you, Nolita, for putting in the chat the Wiley Guide for AI use. And very good. Thank you. So we'll get to some of these questions in the end if there's time, but great questions there in the chat. Thank you. And then third, we have a plus journal, right? A plus one related journal. Here they're talking about contributions by AI tools and technologies to a study must be clearly reported in a dedicated session of the methods, right? So here, this is one where they're saying it has to be in the methods section or in the acknowledgement section for article types that don't have a method section. And the authors have to make sure that all statements in the article represent their own ideas. And if AI was used in a peer review, that must also be disclosed. This is very important because a lot of people think that, okay, well, AI, okay, well, it's not an author, but maybe I can say it's a, it's a peer. It's also not a peer. And also, if you're working with others to do a peer review, this must be peer reviewed, not AI reviewed. So if someone gives you unpublished material that you're still peer reviewing, you can't just drop that into ChatGPT or drop that into Claude or whatever AI tool and have that tool do that for you, because now you're risking something that they have not yet made publicly available, or something that was delegated to you. Now you're sharing that with a tech company, and be aware, even if you turn memory off, that's still not protecting your the unpublished work. Okay, so be very aware about sharing that information um, to any of those other companies, especially if your university doesn't have its own enterprise account, which, if there's time, we can talk about more later. Okay, so regardless of that, if you're selected for doing peer review, you should be not putting that into an LLM. And so Plus has very clear guidelines where we can follow what they're requiring. So just to summarize what I discussed about these three publishers, I put it in a table and I used Claude to create this. So again, to show it as an example of AI use here, I'm comparing. They all say it's permissible to use AI in general for writing, for, spell check. Disclosure is all important across the board with all these three journals. AI as an author, no. AI as a peer reviewer, no. And recently, they have made the language more tight. Okay, very good. All right, thank you. And I see, yes, we can talk about the questions at the end. And this image, so this was also another image that came from a retracted article where the authors tried to generate a cell and they didn't proofread the image. And as I don't know, because show of hands here, how many of you have seen this before? Nobody's seen this before, so I'll cite it here in the end. Thank you, a couple people. This came from the stem cell publication in 2023, where authors had drawn a rat, and there was an issue with the anatomy of the rat, but they also put this image of the cell, which is very inaccurate. This is not what the cell looks like, but they didn't proofread it. And so this was also retracted. So images. Can you use an AI generated image in your scientific journal? Let's see a yes or no in the chat. Thank you. So this publication, we don't permit the use of generative AI or AI-assisted tools to create or alter images and submit the manuscript. No generated and no AI-generated images. Okay, so especially not these, which are wildly inaccurate, and even if you were even before the days of AI. The days of generative AI. Let's go back to, let's say, if you were uploading a picture of a gel that you did a Western blot with in your lab, you would not put an edited image up there in your article, in your publication, because it's generally unethical to edit any images, any data. It's kind of like fabricating results. And these images also, especially in biology and STEM fields, are very problematic because generative AI is a very creative tool. And here you have a completely inaccurate image of the cell. So again, now to compare it with the Microbiology Society journal, you can see across the board, AI as an author is forbidden. And then AI generated images. Look at the last row here. Not permitted, varies, and must disclose. So it's so different, especially you see for the Microbiology Society, it's not permitted, except special cases, which you can read in their FAQ. So never use AI to fabricate results if your data is just missing one single data point, and it would just look so perfect if it was in that direction. Do not get tempted to change that or alter that or use AI for that, because that one outlier in your data is actually data in itself, and also it's unethical to fabricate your results. So please don't do that. AI can't be your co-author. It can't be your peer. Nature also has some specific language about that, which if there was time, I would have put that in my table. So how do you use AI to get ahead in publishing? So ethically, you need to disclose that you've used it. Very important. It's very important for the community to disclose that you used your AI in your work. Most people will accept that a lot better than finding out later and then having to issue an apology and then running into a retracted article. Effectively, to using AI as a thinking partner. We've all heard this. AI is a thought partner, thinking partner, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be you. You have to review, fact check, and reframe the outputs. Especially if your name is on the paper, you need to be very, very critical and careful about this. So now talking about how critically can you use this? How do you check for originality? Any thoughts about that in the chat? Let's see. So how do you check? Let's say if you're peer reviewing. Check sources for hallucinations. So the thing about AI detection tools is, as most of you already know, they're not 100% always reliable. Some will say that they are, and we can talk about that. But again, there's many ways that people have had it written in their own voice. So again, it's best to fully disclose what you're doing and be very critical of every single sentence that AI has generated for you. And so I have some questions to test your knowledge so far to see if the audience is following along. So you can take a picture of this with your phone, and I would like to look into some responses here. So let's have a look here. There's 3 questions in there for you. So we are going to discuss these right now. So take a moment and so the first question is, which of the following options best captures the ethical standard for incorporating AI in academic writing? The first option is AI should be cited only when text is copied directly without modification. The next one, use must always be acknowledged since the generated material is not your own original work. The third is acknowledging AI use is discretionary and depends on the policies of the university or journal. So feel free to take a stab. There's no grading here. I'm just sharing with the audience what if everybody was able to follow along. And there's two more questions after that. The second question is, what is the commonly accepted practice for addressing authorship when AI tools such as ChatGPT are used in academic writing? Yeah, if you want to just put the answer in the Google form, that way others can have a chance at responding it. And the third one is, what is a key ethical concern to be aware of when using AI tools for academic writing and research? So I'll give you time to answer that one as well. Okay, looks like a few answers are coming in. And if you're leaving your name and email, that's for follow-ups or about the critical thinking workbook, I am happy to provide that as well at the end. So finally, the important thing to note is that using AI for any substantive contribution to intellectual content is you're likely required to disclose your use if you're generating or interpreting data, creating code for analysis, creating figures for visualizations, writing or reviewing significant portions of the text. And it's likely is the big carrying a lot of weight here, not required if you're using it for general assistance like basic grammar, copy pasting, brainstorming ideas, text in your manuscript. And there's some basic tools for research, which I won't have time to go into today, but this question I get a lot, like what kind of tools would you use for scientific research? But the important thing to note is when to disclose when you're using it to summarize articles. So first of all, I personally don't use AI to read summarized articles from a paper. If I'm reviewing a paper, I like to read that paper because, again, the devil's in the details. You're going to miss a lot of details if you're just going to read the summary. Especially in science, a lot of scientific discoveries came from those details that AI will often miss. And even if you're using Google Notebook LM, there's parts that Google Notebook LM will miss in its summary. So make sure that even if you're using AI for literature search for your research, to still read it yourself. Peer review using AI to help formulate a review is often discouraged because you are the peer, not AI. Evolving policies, institutional and publisher requirements are always changing. So I want to remind everyone that this recording today, November 2025, is the content that I'm giving you is only relevant for November 2025. A month from now, or even maybe a week from now, or even by the end of this talk, we might have a new AI tool. And now all the journals might have to change their policies. So please make sure that you're staying up to date with this. And feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. Every week I talk about a new paper and the risks and the nuances of that paper on LinkedIn. And be aware of each publisher's policy. So again, I just named a few publishers today in today's talk. Again, it could be different from one that you're publishing with. So make sure that you read what their current FAQs are. And again, don't don't just say we just use an AI tool. You want to make sure you're specific. During the preparation of this work, we use GPT-4 or 4.5 or 5 to do this particular work with. It shows that you're transparent and that your work can be reproduced. In science, it's very important that your work can be reproduced. I know AI content will be different across the board because it's not a deterministic tool. In my class of 150 students, we get 150 different answers, but it's very important that you disclose what you did. So even if they can't reproduce it, they can know why they are not able to reproduce it because you use an AI tool. And really focusing on AI literacy and responsible tool selection is something that I feel I'm seeing across different academic institutions. It's something that is being constantly being updated, and AI literacy in itself is constantly a term that I feel is also constantly being updated. So I've built a lot of frameworks for ethical AI use. One of them is the Unbloom's method, which is really helping researchers to improve critical thinking with AI. There's no time to talk about this today, and it's not the goal of this talk. But if you're interested and you'd like to contact me for material on that or a workshop on that, do let me know. This is something that I've piloted in not just my own classes, but many colleagues have tried it out in different places, and it's getting traction. So I'm happy to talk about that more, about how you can actually use AI to improve your critical thinking and make you a better researcher, so that in the future, whatever job you're getting in the industry or academia, you can have an advantage there, and how we can look at things more critically and down the line. And again, thank you all for joining me today. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any. And thanks again.
Thanks, Tina. I think there was an extremely comprehensive, I think, breakdown of AI disclosures. Love to see all those questions coming in. Yeah, I think the applause says it all in the heart. I think there's a lot of questions, a lot of interesting questions as well. Before we head over to the Q&A section, and feel free to drop in more questions into the Q&A part of it. I want to take a brief moment to just play you a quick video. So one of the things that we've done at Paperpal after we ran that survey was, as Tina mentioned, right, policies are constantly changing from journals. So we've actually built in a feature within Paperpal that's completely free to use, that can actually help you draft your AI disclosure statement, and also link back to the publisher so you can see what the latest policy is all about. So if you give me a second, and I might have to take the sharing back, Tina, if you don't mind.
Sure, yes, I'm going to
Yeah.
stop. And I dropped my LinkedIn there for anyone who's, I'm going to stop presenting. There we go.
Great. So just give me a second. Do this. Okay. Go. Okay, just a second.
Introducing AI disclosure templates on Paperpal. Are you confused about how to disclose AI usage in your academic writing? Use Paperpal's AI disclosure templates. Click on Templates from the right pane and select AI disclosure to insert a compliance statement for students or journals in seconds. Choose the student-ready disclosure format for coursework, essays, or thesis. Expand the disclosure format to read and review the statement. Under Templates for journal submission, pick the standard COPE-aligned template, or choose publisher-specific templates from the drop-down. Curated disclosure statements appear based on your selection. Where you're inserting publisher-specific disclosure templates, open the relevant policy links beside reviewing the templates to verify publisher guidance. This ensures human oversight and authorship responsibility. After reviewing the statement, place your cursor near the required section within your manuscript and click Insert. The disclosure drops exactly where the cursor is: acknowledgements, methods, or a dedicated compliance section. State how AI helped you in your academic writing journey. Edit the tool name or service used, and mention how you used the AI tool. Use the purposes available within the template, or add your own to the disclosure statement accordingly. You can also use the AI footprint toggle to see where Paperpal AI assistance was used, and then add those details to the disclosure statement. There you have it, a precise, aligned AI disclosure, created in seconds. Write with integrity, submit with confidence. Try AI disclosure templates on Paperpal today. Introducing AI disclosure.
Okay, there we have it. So yeah, it's been tough for us to keep track of all these policies ourselves. So we decided to make it a little easier for all our users in there to you know to normalize disclosing AI. And I do agree with you. I think uh, the nuances that the guidelines have now gone into, I think 3 years in, have evolved a lot. And the good thing is, I feel that it's no longer just about improving writing or polishing your work. The policies actually touch a lot more upon how you use it for visuals, are you using it for data analysis, are you using it for literature reviews, and that's the best part. I think AI is here to stay, and how do you kind of normalize it is important. So great. I think with that, let's head over to the questions. So a lot of them, the team's curated a few, so let's see how much we can get through. So I think let's start off with a couple of them where folks have asked about, would you need to disclose a certain type of AI support? So I think one question, Tina, that you could take is, what of AI assisted analysis? And I think here by the audience means data analysis. What's your take on this? Do you need to disclose? Yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So, when in doubt, disclose, right? Because, especially with data analysis, because a couple of years ago, ChatGPT, all these AI tools, especially with math and any kind of data analysis, they weren't so great. Like, I don't know if anyone remembers, but early days of ChatGPT, even basic additions, they were not adding up. And if you push back, like it said, 2 + 2 is you said 2 + 2 is 5, it will say, okay, fine, for you, I'll take 2 + 2 is 5. And so, because it was trying to please the user. So with data analysis, I noticed that issue kind of creeping up in different models. Now ChatGPT is slightly more sycophantic, and it's become a little bit less lately, but Claude and those other tools will push back differently. And it really depends on sometimes the context or what you've given it earlier. So any kind of data analysis. Now, I'm just talking about the basics right now: ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. I know there's all the scientific ones, which I didn't name because they're all behind it. You have to pay for them, but they still make mistakes. Like, even any AI tool that you're using for data analysis, it will make mistakes, and that's part of the critical thinking framework that I've put together. Is the reason I made this was because my students were able to see even the most advanced AI data analysis tools did still have some mistakes. And so, if you're disclosing that, in a way, I feel that you're protecting yourself by saying, look, I used this and it got this. But now, if you were using a calculator, that would be different, because you use a calculator, it's a deterministic tool, whereas generative AI is not a deterministic tool. So you're going to get the most statistically plausible answer. So I highly recommend disclose, as over disclose if you have to, don't under disclose. Yeah.
Great. I agree with that. I have a follow-up question there, Tina. In fact, with newer models, and you're right, the older ones, used to be extremely troublesome with data analysis. But with the newer models, do you think it's useful, especially when you talk about the critical thinking, the human in the loop coming in, right, to review, the process the AI has taken to arrive at the result? Does that typically help with kind of reducing the chances of missing, like, an oversight that could have been made by AI? Do you have any experience?
Um, that's a great question. I think, if you're, let's say, if you're asking, Claude to do some coding for you, so you can look at the process and then see, because Claude does that. It will show you sometimes behind the scenes of how it generated an HTML or generated something. If you already know some coding, and you might be able to troubleshoot. It would be useful if all of them kind of gave you behind the scenes peek through, but it's not really the case with AI tools. Sometimes you just get an answer, and it could be the wrong answer. It's a statistically plausible answer, right? It may be helpful. It's just something out there, another thing to look at. And I never treat it as this is the answer. So I agree with you that if it was possible to see behind the scenes of everything, of the probability, but it isn't really, because every person could get a different answer. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think,
Yeah.
meaning, as you said, right, it is important to at least try and understand how they've arrived at it, because you're more likely to kind of spot an error. But sometimes you need to prompt it to basically say, explain your reasoning when you arrive at it. But you still definitely need that oversight, I think, more than just disclosure as well. I think that's important for the audience.
Yes, and even with the even if you prompt it to say explain your reasoning, I noticed even before GPT-5, where you had the reasoning model versus the what was it,
Yeah.
the O model, where you could have the thinking model. Even the thinking model's reasoning was not the way that we reason as a human sometimes. So, for example, I had taken a picture of Lumen headquarters. I went there just to visit the headquarters, and I asked it, where is this location based? And it said it didn't know, because it couldn't guess. So it looked at my previous prompts and said, this user is recently been flying to these areas, maybe it's going to be in this area. And so it was kind of like not a reasoning that I would expect. If this was a scientific query, it would not take the traditional route a human would go in their step-by-step thinking to solve a problem. It would kind of go around me and say, well, let me find out where this person is actually right now. What other things did they ask me? And so that's you
Interesting.
know what I mean? If this is a scientific question, you would be not going down the scientific route to get to the answer.
That's a great example of that. Okay.
Thanks.
I think the next question that we have is, what about using it for identifying a bibliography on a specific topic for your papers? I think that comes into the literature review space. Any thoughts on that?
To identify bibliography, you mean like if there's already some generated references and you don't have time to check the references, so you're asking AI to check the references for you? Is that what you're asking?
I think that the question just says, what about using it for identifying a bibliography on a specific topic for your paper? So I think it's more about just finding references on a topic. I don't know who asked
Yeah,
this
I
question.
think it would be good. I think if you're looking to find good sources, there's lots of really good AI tools that can draw mind maps, that can say, maybe check this other paper by this author. So I think that's a really good way to look at papers that you normally wouldn't. In fact, there was a research recently done by some colleagues at Stanford, where I don't know if anyone's heard about this, but there was it was like all the publications that were submitted for this journal, they were all AI generated. The reviewers were all AI. They had some Nobel laureates review that, and they were looking at the accuracy of this AI generated conference. It was a complete AI conference with AI submissions and AI reviewers. And it was quite fascinating, because they found almost 50% of the material to be hallucinations, but then there was about like 20 or 30% or so, don't quote me on this, that were actually very novel and very interesting. So I'm happy to share that resource later. But again, I talk about this stuff on LinkedIn most of the time, and it was really interesting, because it was showing to me the value of where AI could come in and help, with breakthroughs, and also how like 50% of them were just hallucinated papers. So they had lots of mistakes. So it's really fascinating.
Yep. I think finding papers that you don't typically look up, I think, is one of the definite advantages. Because a lot of people, just with the volume, just resort to journals they know and authors they know. So there's a lot of research that slips through the cracks. So I think, yeah,
Absolutely, like one of us, yeah.
yeah. So
No, I was gonna say, like, one person can read only so many papers in a week, right? Whereas in AI, you can go through, like, you can have your agentic AI go through 20 or 30 so papers and then notify you on Monday and say, "I found this thing," which is really cool and it's exciting, and I think that would be a good use of AI because 'cause you're using it to research things that are constantly, evolving, and I think that's very helpful. But again, super important to always be transparent and always disclose.
uh,
That's what I would do. Yeah.
yeah. And I heard you mentioning summarizing earlier. So one good use case that we've had some of our folks really say is they use the AI summaries to really understand if this is relevant to their research, just to shortlist it
Mhm.
for. So it doesn't replace the reading, but it just helps you sift through the 35 items that might hit your inbox from Google Scholar. So that's
Absolutely.
great. I think we have a question that I think Adarsh was very keen on answering, and it's an AI detection. So I'm going to take this one. So Adarsh says, I have used AI tool, u.com, to improve language. It shows 72% AI. Will the paper be desk rejected? Plagiarism is 12%. So, yeah, I think, do you
Oh, you
have
said you
a
were gonna
thought?
take that one?
Okay. Okay. So I think the reason I always take this question is because we always get a question about, I've used some kind of AI tool and I see some others in there, right? Paperpal, Grammarly, and it's showing up an AI detection, and it's a plagiarism score. So I think the first thing that I advise is, I think AI detection and plagiarism are two very different things. These days, if you are using AI to generate content, it might be plagiarized because it is, kind of using a lot of content that's published in the web for its training. So if you're just using it as is in any context, you might run the risk of, unintentional plagiarism. So it's always important to check for plagiarism. But plagiarism is just telling you, I think somebody asked a question on originality and similarity with other works and whether you're citing those sources and giving them due credit and potentially explaining that work in your words. So I think that's plagiarism. AI detection, and I'm no expert here, but from the other sessions that we've done, what we've seen both in the publishing industry as well as in the education space is AI detection is merely, a, someone described it a metal detector. It's just, to ensure that that paper, that piece of work goes through another level of checks. Because I think the example that Tina quoted, right, where someone left in a fragment of what the AI said. Certainly this is, something to, start off your introduction with. And you don't want those kind of fragments to be left into a paper. Now, it might be perfectly fine that those authors would have written and edited the rest of the content, but mistakenly left that in. But these sorts of signals from the AI detection ensures the publisher or the educator is taking, a deeper look at it. I think in the educator context, it's very, very nuanced because you need to comply with how you are or not supposed to use AI. So I think purely there it depends on the policies of that particular class, that course that kind of assigns. So I think use of AI and AI detection doesn't mean that you will get penalized. But I think what it points out is it's a signal for yourself as well to actually go back, review the content, and ensure, does it reflect your point of view? Does it reflect your voice? And would you take accountability, right, for that content? So I think that's the
Absolutely.
most important thing. So happy, Tina, if you'd like to add anything to that.
No,
But
I
yeah,
really like that, the metaphor, the metal detector at the kind of like the airport where it just goes off and it's like you have to go back and it's like there's nothing there or there's something there and it's just there. So, but I also wanted to, what you said about when you're training the AI unintentionally. So let's say you're peer reviewing a paper, you upload, it's unpublished, something that you're putting that in ChatGPT or Claude or um, any AI tool. another person, another side of the world later, these models are getting trained all the time, might think they came up with something novel, and then you had already put some of that in there, and it's I've seen a lot of people saying, well, this is very similar to the argument that I made 6 months ago, and both of those people were using an AI tool, and neither of them were disclosing. So that's why it's so important for the community to be disclosing their work, and that way the companies have more accountability.
And I think there's another important point you're touching upon. I think with folks in the audience who are, using AI with unpublished work, and especially original hypotheses and findings, it's very important that you check which tools you're using. Is the tool really using your prompts, your content for any kind of model training? Because some of that then goes in. And that's one of the reasons why if you, pick tools like PayPal, we make sure that any model that's underlying it, none of the data goes in for training. I think with ChatGPT, they do offer settings as well that will allow you to opt off your data being used for training, and kind of being very vigilant of taking these steps is important if you want to safeguard your work. Otherwise, you're right. You might think you've not even published it, but it might be sitting somewhere in a review pipeline, but it's already reached someone else because the models are getting updated almost daily.
Yeah, and absolutely, and the thing about turning memory off, like I said, I've seen a lot of people give this advice: just turn memory off and you're safe. That's not the case, right? It's not the case. If you put something in there, it could be public at any time, and if someone claims, well, no, this work is mine, and how's anyone going to find out? If AI detection tools don't work, then how is anyone going to find out? Well, here's how they'll find out: is if there's constant lawsuits going on, and if it's completely unrelated, you've got something unrelated in there, your earlier prompts could come up, and just to be very, very aware of this. And as like I said, over disclose. That's one takeaway. Don't under disclose. So
yeah, and I think there are a lot of, we're running out of time, so we might not be able to take more questions, but I think there are a lot of questions around, I used it to edit it or make something concise or do something. I think the same principle kind of applies. I think every bit that you use it for, you are always safer if you disclose. And you can be as specific as you want in terms of how you've used it, and that helps. So I think that's the bit I'd like to add. So I know we're on time for the session today, but Tina, would you like to leave the audience with any closing remarks as we wrap up today's session?
I think AI is the age that we're entering is a really interesting age we're entering an era where AI can really revolutionize research and teaching and learning, and if we can use it critically, that's the advantage. That's the promise of generative AI. And if we can move past these issues with like detection tools and the concerns we have earlier, I think there's a real opportunity. And I just wanted to say, I know everyone here is going to do great things with AI in the future, and I'm really excited to stay connected. I've left my contact info. If there's time for questions, feel free to reach out. And thanks again for having me.
Thanks so much, Tina, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. I think it's great to see so many folks at the end of the hour still around, and we will try and answer some of your questions over email. But thanks again, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Good evening, good night, wherever you're from.
Thank you. Thank